Hi. Let her rip. Okay, why digital learning? My name is Darren. I've been thinking about this for a little while, and I want to share with you some of the literacies and competencies that we're working towards around the division. And historically in education, we've been really, really good at focusing on literacy. We've been really good about the skills and aptitudes of learning to read and write. But as our society has evolved, as culture has evolved, as technology has evolved, the number of literacies or number of things that we call literacy has grown to include things like numeracy. The ability to deal with numbers and data in a meaningful way that connects with students' lives and citizens' lives so that they can make ethical and responsible decisions for our country. Now, one of the things that changed dramatically was when the printing press was first invented. We didn't have the old world plus the printing press. We had an entirely new world. There were new jobs, like something called publishing, and a writer, and an author. These things didn't exist in the past. And then technology comes, and we get computers, and more specifically the internet. And a job like publishing is no longer a job, it's a button. The button says publish, you push it, and that job is done. But now there's a whole bunch of new jobs that didn't exist before. And we have to start preparing our students to take on those kinds of roles in the future of society. It's really a question of scale. In the old world, your local geography and the people that you knew was really your sphere of influence. But nowadays our sphere of influence is much larger than that. It's global. You can actually have an impact by something that you do locally on something globally. So what I want to articulate for you is what are the 3 literacies that we're working towards infusing in classrooms across the division. And what does that look like in each classroom, or what is the goal that we would like to see teachers and students accomplish. So the first of those things revolves around the work that a craftsman does, like someone who creates something, someone who builds something. The eye that they bring when they look at it allows them to determine flaws in the object and excellence. Now, in an increasingly media-rich society, in order to understand media, students have to be critical creators of media in order to be critical consumers. During the BP oil spill, one blogger saw this image on the BP website and realized that there was something funny about it, that something wasn't right. And he was able to identify that, and you'll see some of the things that he thought weren't right, because he had some skill manipulating images. Critical consumers of media need to be creators of media, because it's only through the creation of media that you learn to understand how that media was assembled or put together. Engagement is often described as the purpose of digital learning, but engagement is not a goal. Engagement is a means. Engagement is insufficient. Engagement is a means towards the ends of student empowerment. So imagine that you're a middle school kid, maybe in England, and you start a blog about what you eat for lunch each day, rating what you're eating. Her blog started in the spring of this year. It went viral. Other kids around the world are sharing their lunches with her, pictures of their lunch, and it started to reflect poorly on her school district. So on June 14th, they shut down her blog. They said she couldn't do it anymore. Because of the global outcry and media outcry around the world, on June 15th, her blog was reinstated. So here's a young girl who's actually had an impact not just on her local community, but she actually raised thousands of dollars to feed kids in Africa through her blog. Now, one of the other things about digital learning is it's often held in sometimes called 21st century learning. It's held in contrast to 20th century learning, where everyone has to learn to do the same thing at the same time in the same way. And that's really preparing them for the factories. Our kids need to learn how to do different things at different times in different ways. It's the first time in the history of our planet that we're preparing kids for a future that isn't clear. The near future may be clear, but the distant future is blurred. We don't know what that's going to look like and what kind of jobs and what kind of skills and competencies they're going to need to be successful in the future. But there's good news too, because it turns out that the best way to learn something is to teach it. And so we can teach our students to become contributors to the global knowledge commons. The stuff that they learn in their classrooms, they can publish and share on the internet and spread that worldwide. In the time of the one-room schoolhouse, what we called knowledge, the facts and ideas that were embedded in books, the isolated bits of information, we called that knowledge. But nowadays, knowledge has become far more complex than that. We don't want the kids to just collect dots. We want to teach the kids to connect the dots. Look at my phone, learn the answers to all the questions in the book. That no longer became knowledge worth having. But what do I do with that knowledge? How do I connect it and create meaning and tell a compelling story? The dots that you were looking at, in fact, on the left you see England and on the right you see Europe and the curve of the earth, because what you were looking at was a picture of Europe taken from the International Space Station. So we need kids to learn how to make these meaningful connections between the dots they see on the page and draw patterns that affect the world. Now this quote, if we teach today as we taught yesterday, we rob our children of tomorrow, often attributed to Dewey, I can't find that source in any of Dewey's published works. But this quote, often attributed to Alvin Toffler, it's not, it's actually Herbert Gurgloy. He basically says this, that the illiterate of this century will not be those who cannot read and write. It will be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and then relearn. Those are some of the literacies that we're preparing our students for. Thanks.